You already know you want more. You can feel it, that pull towards something bigger. This podcast is for anyone who's done waiting for permission. I'm Julia McKelgan. I'm a geologist, a founder, and the author of A Life Chosen. And every week I have conversations with people who decided, quietly, precisely, and without apology, to choose the bigger life. This is Choose Life Boldly. Welcome. So welcome to the very first episode of Choose Life Boldly. Today, my guest is my sister, Friederike Baumeister. So Friederike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited and super grateful that the very first time trying a podcast is with you. And when I was thinking about what we could talk about today, there are so many different things. And I got some guidance today as I just sort of went into meditation. And it was a very simple message. It was stepping into your life. And I think that's such a great theme to talk about because you have so many great stories and so many good things to share in terms of what it means to step into your life.
Well, thanks for that. They've not all come easily. But yeah, if there's anything that I can share that imparts any wisdom or any shared experiences that help anyone else, then that's great. I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have a lot of stories and a lot of experience in not living in your past and not using your past experiences as a shadow into the future.
That's true. That took a lot of learning to get to the point of not living in my past. I think we all have different stories. We all come into life with different experiences. Some will say that we chose the life before we got here. Others have the experience that, life is lived and learned as you go through it. It doesn't really matter which one you believe. But I think depending on what your story is and what you've decided to learn in this life, it does take courage to do it. And I will say for me, it took me a long time. I remember when I turned 40 being mad about certain aspects of my life. And I was like, I cannot believe I am a 40-year-old woman that is still struggling with some of these things. And I made a choice at that point where I was like, that's enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I am choosing certain aspects like ways of living or ways of not asking for permission anymore from others and to just step into creating what I wanted. And so I don't know, I think back and I reflect on some of the things that Brene Brown says, and it's that sort of midlife crisis, anywhere between 35 and 50, that she thinks says most women go through this. And it's that whole enough. I need to step into myself and stop asking for permission.
I find it interesting that you said you got mad. Why do you think getting mad is actually a good thing sometimes?
Well, I go back to that little bit of wisdom that you imparted at one point. Anger creates movement. And it does. Anger is a good thing. I know that in our society, especially as women, we're taught that anger is not great for us. So I think it's okay for men to express anger, and it's okay for women to express guilt. Right. And so it's allowing women to express anger. And when that anger comes, it creates this hard line stop of certain behaviors and certain aspects. And the anger is welcome when it comes in like that. Because I think it's absolutely necessary for us to create that change into a different reality in our lives.
Right. So anger, when it shows up like it does, and you are aware of what is underneath that anger and why it's there, can be super empowering.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm sure you've had moments of that anger where it's out of sheer.
Oh, oh yes. Yes. I definitely still have moments of that anger where it just starts to bubble right through you and there's this vibration. Um, and for me in the past, it used to be super explosive
Mhm.
and really destructive. And now when I feel it coming up, I know I have to move. Like you touched on the fact that anger is movement. I have to go for a walk. I have to go outside, go for a run, clean the house, anything. And then it allows my head and my brain to start to understand like why is it there? What does it mean? And what do I need to do?
Mhm. Well, and there's an aspect too where um, I think about one of the recent times I got angry, and what it did for me is I became angry, and I wasn't sure if my boundary was appropriate or not. But the anger that my body carried showed me that I had to listen. And I think as women, maybe not all women are like this, but I know that I'm like this, is sometimes I will overgive and multitasking and getting all of these things done and being super productive and we're super busy. But in that time frame, there's times where it's really hard to really understand if there is a boundary in place and if a boundary has been crossed. But when that anger shows up, I've learned to listen to my body because my body is actually telling me, it's sharing the wisdom with me that my mind can't always grasp in some of those moments in life when you are really busy. And I think you and I are both in a moment. We're in a phase in life of being busy with having children and being working mothers. And so listening to our bodies and what our bodies is willing to share, I think is super empowering.
Absolutely. What does it mean to listen to your body and how did you start to understand how to listen to your body?
Um, I'd say it's been a journey for a big portion of my life. Um, I came in, I didn't know this as a child, but I have a relatively intuitive body. I think a lot of human beings do. We're just not necessarily trained to listen to it or to tune into it. And so when I was younger in my 20s, I was really frustrated with life because I had to open up to listening to my intuition. Otherwise, I became physically sick. And to me, it was like, everyone says you have free will. And I didn't want to be super intuitive. I didn't want to have to listen to my body. I wanted to live life on my own terms with what I decided. And so, what it felt like to me is, oh, it's free will, except it's like flying on an airplane. And they tell you, well, you have to put your seatbelt on to fly on the airplane. And I felt like I had to open up to my intuition in life, otherwise, I was sick. So I was like, so it's not really free will. And there is free will on this planet for sure. But we also came here with things that we wanted to learn. Like our soul came in with a soul imprint and a soul impression. And this is what I believe. And a set of items that it wanted to learn in this lifetime. So our free will is a bit guided by that soul imprint. Because, I mean, being on this planet, it's a learning paradigm. We're all here to learn and to grow.
And I think this is where the free will comes in is if you choose to want to learn and progress on your soul journey, that part is the free will part. And you can choose to go on it or you can choose to avoid it. The unfortunate part is if you avoid learning and walking down the path that your soul is trying to guide you on, your life is sort of Groundhog Day. It just, the same story repeats itself and the same lessons try to show up and the same challenges that you experience show up again and again and again. And so we do have free will. We can either be stubborn and not progress and try to sit in your own little space and in your own silo. you can decide to work with the evolution of where your soul wants to go.
Hmm. I think with maturity, that's the answer that I came to. My 20-year-old self would have disagreed.
I wanted to circle back on giving yourself permission and not looking for external permission to live the best version of your life that you want and can live.
Mhm.
What does that look like?
I think it's quiet. I think they're just choices that you make every day. Uh, I'm gonna go so far as to say they're micro choices. Um, in as simple as choosing how you nourish your body, um, or what you're consuming when it comes to the media input in your life, to as big as making a choice to start a company. But you've made the choice for yourself. You're not looking for to prove anyone wrong or to show anyone else how it's done. They're choices that you make for you to challenge yourself and to grow as a person. Because I do think life is a game, and I don't mean that in a flippant way. I mean that as in, we can live here and we can ride life out. We can Netflix and chill for our life if we want to. Or we can choose to push ourselves and see what we actually came here to do, what we're capable of. And I think you and I have both been on this path of growth. I mean, for years we've been on this path of growth, but it's changed from self-awareness and personal development focused mainly to now a push to see what we're capable of when it comes to creating a life that we want, in the sense of pushing ourselves to seeing what we can achieve in this life. It's great watching other people and listening to various podcasts, because you realize that just trying is the first step, and continuing to try. It's like I listened to one yesterday about a pottery class, and they were split into two groups, and they had different focuses. And their focus was to make the best vase that they could possibly, like the most perfect one that they could possibly make. And the other group was tasked with making as many as they could possibly make by the end of the assignment. The group that tried to make the most perfect one only made a few, and they focused so hard on it and they thought so much about it that they ended up with a product. But the ones that were tasked at making the most actually ended up with like one or two pieces that was more perfect than the perfection group, because they made so many and they learned so much along the way. And so I think even this podcast is the first step. We have to try one to figure it out, and we already, are continuing on this journey. And so I think like a lot of it that I'm learning is like, just get out there and do it. It's easier said than done. But I do think a big part of life is like, now it's like just forcing yourself to continue experimenting and moving forward, because what else are you going to do? Like, you can Netflix and chill, or you can do that.
Right. Absolutely. And taking action is going to sever any doubt or apprehension, because the moment that you take action, you're now focused on something different. Whereas if you don't take action and you're waiting for perfection, you can always talk yourself out of it. There's the self-doubt nagging voice will prevent us from moving forward. Whenever I wanted to go out for a run, I wanted to, but I didn't feel like it. So procrastination would eventually end up in me not going for a run. But if I just got up, put my shoes on, and even stepped out the door, that was 90% of trying to get out there. And then I'd be able to push myself further, right? And actually come back and run. And even if it was just, let's run for 1 or 2 kilometers, maybe, usually it was 3 or 4 by the time you're done. But it really was getting action versus trying to think your way into doing something.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Um, I was going to touch on something very different. It relates to what we're talking about, and it's this idea of like, how do you pick yourself up? It just feels like you're failing all over the place. How do you pick yourself up and keep going?
I'd say I first give myself the moment to fall apart. And I feel like that when I listen to a bunch of these podcasts, it's like always stay positive, always keep moving ahead. When you're feeling negative, shift your body, shift your mindset into a more positive state. Sometimes letting yourself fall apart is what needs to happen to allow the release to be there for the new information or for that rejuvenated sense of purpose comes back in again. And time and again, I've noticed that there is these moments of just letting go and surrendering to what is or what isn't. And I feel like in that moment, it creates like a 0 point where things can reorganize. And the next day, I can pick myself back up again, and there'll be new information or new insight. And I think it's important to allow ourselves to be human. I think a lot of the time, like, yes, we need to stay positive and stay focused on our goals, but we're also human beings that have a capacity, and the breaking point is a part of our progression. And I think it's a really important part at times. I mean, we can't live in that place, but when you allow yourself to hit that breaking point, it's a good thing. Sometimes you need to break apart to allow the fresh insights, the fresh energy to come in. And so I would say that when it gets to that point, that's always been my experience, just to let it break. Tomorrow's a new day. New insights, new information will come. And that's when you pick yourself back up again.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Uh, when I was learning alternative healing modalities, we talked about that specific aspect of being human and allowing you to fall apart or break apart, whether that was to uncontrollably cry or get mad or just really, really fall apart, because it's actually really important in the brain, because that's how you create a new paradigm.
Mm.
And like we always talk about paradigm shifts and like, how do you get there? But you actually get there by completely surrendering and falling apart. And so if you see a child and they're crying, or anybody crying, the worst thing you can do is interrupt them and ask them to acknowledge that they're crying, or by words. Like, and the best thing that you can do is let the emotions process through, and then when they're done, then you can talk, because otherwise you interrupt the brain moving into that new paradigm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and that totally makes sense, because it does feel like a fresh energy comes in after. I'm going to call it the falling apart, just to simplify the lingo. It does, and it's like, but you need to almost like this fall apart the night of sleep, and then the new energy comes in. It's like that rest, that sleep is really important in there too, because I do think the brain does a lot of reorganizing in the sleep phase, and then it's ready for something new on the next day.
Yeah, your subconscious is then really figuring out what's happening and how to shift into that new space, which our conscious mind is incapable of doing. We're always trying to control what's going on. So it's actually quite beautiful that in all of this, if you are trying to move forward, you actually have to allow yourself to fall apart. And then you have to allow your subconscious mind to take over and shift you onto that new pathway and give you new insights. So that really the aspect of control doesn't even fit in any of the idea of living your best full potential. When you really get down to the core of it, control doesn't really have a place in being part of living an extraordinary life.
Yeah, no, not really. I think you can kind of outline goals and achievements, but like you say, there's, I mean, control on timelines and the full execution of it and the journey of it, there is none. You can have your end vision, and then you almost need to surrender the rest of the process. So,
Yeah, that's there's the things that you can control, and then there's the things that are out of your control. And when you can figure out what's on your list of like really truly what you are in control of, and you can focus on that, and you can let all the other things like when and how and who's going to help you and what that road looks like, unknown list on God's list. There's if you can just let that do its thing, and you can control what you can control. It's the micro decisions, like how you get up in the morning, right?
the tasks you can control,
Yeah.
and the steps, like, the baby steps, the bigger steps. But even those will shift and change sometimes. So,
Yeah. So one last question. When do you know that your journey has made a detour?
I think sometimes hindsight's 2020. You're not going to know it until you're past it.
Mm.
At other times, I think it comes in so hard and fast, it kind of smacks you onto the new path. Like you're just shifted over instantly. I think about when I got pregnant with my daughter, perhaps that was always my timeline and what my soul path was, but it happened so quickly that to me it felt like a brand new path. It created, a multitude of shifts. There are times where there's a recognition that you're completely off your path, not even that your path has shifted, but that you're so far off your path that you're not even living in alignment with who you are anymore. And I think you and I have both experienced that. And that's a heartbreaking realization. But at the same time, for those wanting to shift back on their path, you can usually do it quite quickly. It's acknowledgement of how far off you are, how quickly you can then get back on your path. But the off your path is usually a difficult realization, in my experience.
Yeah. It's a slap in the face, for
Yeah,
sure.
that one's not fun. Yeah.
Okay. So the podcast is called Choose Life Boldly. And I'd like to know, what is your definition of choosing life boldly?
I think it's choosing myself. And I mean that in an authentic way. I don't mean that in never choosing anyone else and never thinking about other people or what they need. I mean that as in we all need to choose ourselves to create a bold life and an authentic life. I think it's the only way to create a bold life is to choose yourself. And I think that means to continuously grow as a person and figure out who you are and what you're capable of. And I don't think that growing ever stops. I think you might be 80 and 90 and still doing it. What's the point in not continuing and not continuing to challenge myself and not continuing to grow as a person? Boredom sets in and then it becomes mundane. And I just wonder what the point is of being here. I do think it's a continuous evolution and a continuous growth. And I mean, I look at our parents and they are continually growing and they're continually doing new things. And I mean, they're going to be turning 70 next year, and that hasn't stopped them from doing new things and trying out new experiences and continuing to create life for themselves. And so I think that's been a really great example for us, for our children, you know, to see these grandparents that are so active and that are following their dreams. I mean, our mother is finally following her dream. She
Yes.
hasn't for, you know, the past 10 years roughly. And before that, she did in little ways too. But it's, she didn't let life tell her she was too old to stop. And so, you know, I think this is ingrained in us in a large way, is to continue to challenge life and challenge ourselves in life. And I think that's what it means to live boldly. It doesn't mean, you know, you're a loud, boisterous person. It means that you continue to choose to challenge yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. And thank you so much for all of your wisdom. There's so many nuggets of wisdom in what you just shared.
This was fun. I'm honored that you chose me as your first guest. So that's exciting. And I
Absolutely.
know you're going to do really great with all this stuff. I mean, you've spent a lifetime becoming the person that you are. It didn't always come easy, and nor does it for anybody that's walking that path. You know, challenge people to continue to grow and to become more of who they already are. So I think it's great. And thanks for having me.
Now that's what choosing boldly looks like. Not loud, not perfect, just decided. If this conversation connected with you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Find me at juliamckelgan.com and know that A Life Chosen arrives in September, and there's a course coming as well. I'll see you in the next one.